What's up, everybody? Another episode of Ripple Effect. I gotta have a new entrance. I say that every time, like another.
Oh, what's up, everybody?
No, in another episode of the Ripple Effect podcast.
Well, at least it's another. I mean,
Yeah.
you didn't say that the first time.
Yeah, you're right. But it's always weird. Like starting this thing is always kind of weird. But we're here again with Dave.
Dave is back.
Dave is back. My co-host is here. So first of all, I want to thank the Truth Loader fans that checked out all our stuff. I thought that was awesome, and they were awesome guests. And actually, I think all our guests were awesome. And thanks to all their fans that came out and supported us. And I think that we're all in the same type of boat of what we're doing. I think we're all trying to provoke thought, maybe hit on topics that you won't really get anywhere else. And I think that when 99% of the most popular shows are, stupid and Duck Dynasty and stuff like that, I think there are people out there who are looking for they're looking for a way to get knowledge, but a lot of people work full-time jobs. They don't have time. So I think that's where podcasting is awesome. And, you can be a carpenter, you can, do a lot of traveling, throw something on, and actually, even with a busy life, you can, listen to something that might be thought-provoking or informative. So thanks to all those fans of those shows and podcasters and stuff that came to check out our stuff. And we got definitely some really interesting guests coming up. Don't have any exact dates on most of them yet, but we definitely have a bunch of them that definitely agreed to be on. So I got like 5 or 6 different guests that are definitely going to be on from other podcasters, people, actually a couple documentaries I'm a big fan of that are going to be on, and which I'm super excited about. And I've gotten 2 doctors got back to me from 2 different documentaries that are going to be on. So that's when me and Dave are going to have to pretend we know what the hell we're saying, but we'll do our best to try to, get the most out of those doctors and ask, good questions and whatnot. And so that's that. Again, definitely check out our our iTunes, whatever. If you haven't subscribed to us, definitely subscribe to us. That way, every time you get a new episode uploaded, you'll get it immediately. So, like I said, we're on Stitchers, YouTube. We were doing like 15-20 minutes on YouTube of every episode, and then you would have to get the rest of the audio. But actually, a lot of people were just like, dude, why don't you just put the whole video on YouTube? I was playing it, and then it stopped or whatnot. So I think for now on, we're going to start putting probably the whole thing on YouTube in case anybody wants to actually sit down and watch us, I guess, for an hour. But so thanks to those guys. A lot of shit's been going on in the news, and a lot of stuff's been going on, period. Dave's been super busy with work, and I think that's the story of everybody's life.
I feel like with all these shows that you do and all the guests that you get, I'm always playing catch up. And I'm familiar with a lot of the people that you're talking about only because of conversations that we've had in the past. But every guest we've had on, it's been I feel like I'm doing homework to catch up, like Doug Rushkoff, reading through a lot of his stuff. I always feel better. I almost feel more like instead of being a co-host, I feel more like a listener, because the show introduces me to a lot of new things that I wouldn't have otherwise come across.
Well, that was kind of my purpose, because the whole idea was, there's a lot of interesting books and documentaries and people that I'm really intrigued with. And if I could get them on, or, at first, the first couple episodes, we talked about them, and I figured I could share some, some interesting knowledge or people or books or whatever, documentaries, just by bringing them up and that way. So it's cool that now the next step is you actually get to meet some of these people, and one, we have an excuse to sit down with some really cool people and talk to them, and the other thing is a lot of our listeners who probably don't have the time to research or find I don't read either, but I find time. I'm a little nuttier, when it comes down to staying up late and dealing with like 4 hours of sleep because I stayed up watching a documentary or whatnot. So the fact that I get to share the fruits of my labor.
You're the one that actually is doing all this stuff, and it's actually kind of funny. I saw one of your recent posts on Twitter that listed all the upcoming guests you have lined up, and I'm like, oh my God, I got a lot of work to do to catch up and find out who these people are. But it's a really cool experience for me, as you tell me about the guests we're going to have on, and I start researching, watching their videos, listening to their podcasts, reading their books, and you feel like you get to know these people. And then as soon as they come over Skype and they're on the show, it's like the coolest experience. It's almost surreal. Like,
it is.
I remember I watched the Rushkoff Stephen Colbert thing, and I thought this guy is like, he handled Stephen Colbert so well. He was so relaxed. He was funny. He's lighthearted, and you get a feel of how it's going to go. And he was really disarming. As brilliant as this guy is, he seemed so easy to talk to, as you guys were talking about different things, and just a really laid back, cool guy. I thought that was a pretty awesome experience.
Well, that was one thing. A lot of people were like, "How are you getting these guests on?" and this and that. And I'm like, honestly, I think that a lot of these people, they like talking about whatever they write about or whatever documentary they were a part of or whatever their podcast is about. And so I think a lot of these people are really cool people. They're not people who made millions or got popular being cutthroat and screwing people. They're people who did what they enjoyed and happened to make a career out of it. And basically what I offer is, hey, come on our show. I'd love to. And the thing is, they don't have to be on. I mean, I really don't offer much, if anything. I mean, the people are like, oh, well, they get a little advertisement. I'm like, no, we get a little advertisement. They don't get shit from us. There's no like the ripple effect bump. All of a sudden, they get like 1,000 Twitters followers. But the thing is, it's really beneficial. So the thing is, it's really cool that, especially the first guest, because like everybody up till now, because we really didn't have a resume, and the fact that they came on without really.
Who was our first guest?
James Corbett, which was awesome.
You know what? And that was pretty cool, because my introduction to James Corbett was the 5-minute 9/11 video where he's talking 900 miles an hour, presenting all these different things, and that YouTube video has been seen by millions of people. And again, another great guy to listen to and talk to, and just really down to earth. None of the guests that we've had, as brilliant as they are, as well spoken as they are, as circulated as they are, have come across as arrogant in any way. They're like sitting right here in this room, and like if you were to bump into them at line at the grocery store, you'd have a conversation with them. And I credit you with finding the right people to act that way. You know what I mean? I'm sure there are people out there. Well, I'm sure you've reached out to people that haven't responded, and those are probably the people that
I don't want to say names, but I've had people write me back and ask me, like, literally, like, fill out a sheet on how many Twitter followers you have, how many Facebook likes you have, and I'm just like, listen, I'm like, I'm not gonna impress you with any amazing numbers, but what I can say is I want to be a part of spreading this information. I want to be a part of sharing stuff that maybe people aren't going to get from daytime TV or from MSNBC or whatnot. I want to be a part of, and that's the cool thing is, like, Truth Loaders, James Corbett, Guy Evans from Smells Like Human Spirit podcast. Like, these people, they have led us into that family of, like, hey, these guys are also, they're angry about something. They're willing to talk about these subjects and
angry or passionate.
Yeah, and so it's cool because I feel like we're a part of that family of, like, you know what, like, we're trying to put together this puzzle, trying to figure things out, and we're talking about things that necessarily aren't necessarily being talked about in most people's households or in most people's lives in general. I think a lot of people want to talk about. One thing I've learned is that a lot of people want to talk about these things. They just don't have anybody to talk to about it. Podcasting was when I first got into just listening to them. One thing that was really intriguing to me was the fact that I love the fact that I got to listen to people that I would want to hang out with and sit down and talk to, and they're having conversations about topics that were really intriguing to me that I wouldn't have with, like, my friends, or some of my friends, and so it's like you get to kind of feel like you're a part of this conversation or at least a spectator, but you feel like you're there and you're listening to something that you're like, this is intriguing to me. So I think that's the part that people really enjoy. I think that
See, for me, I'm nowhere near as absorbed or involved in this as you are.
Well, we haven't touched the surface of the topics that you're intrigued with yet, but we will.
But what I'm trying to say is that the way this show is, the guests that we've had on they've been really informal, casual conversations where, and I know you hate me for this, but I find myself just kind of sitting back and listening and not contributing at all, because it's just so easy to listen to. So I think as far as podcasts go, and my being involved in this with you, this is really your thing, and I'm just along for the ride. I mean, that's very apparent. Oh. But my perspective of this is the casual podcast. I'm not a huge podcast guy. I haven't listened to a ton of podcasts. When I travel and if I'm going on a plane, I'll download a bunch of podcasts, based on what you tell me. Okay, how many you got? 4, take these 4. And that's what I'll do. So you don't have to be listening to podcasts from the moment you're awake to the moment you fall asleep. There's a casual way to enjoy this. And, even like we were talking about earlier, it's something that you can have on in the background and learn and pay attention to while you're doing other things and still pick up something. If something catches your ear, you'll stop and listen to it. So the interest in podcasts, I think, is runs the spectrum from, if you pick a topic, like I know you have a lot of things that you're seriously interested in, you can pick a topic and you can really immerse yourself in that and learn everything you want to know or find out everything you want to know. But you can go all the way to the other extreme and have it be just background and enrich you in a casual, indirect way. You know what I mean? So I feel like you're the authority on the podcast. You're the authority on a lot of these topics, and they interest me. And this format gives me the opportunity to hear about this kind of stuff that I wouldn't otherwise. And that's the epitome of the ripple effect, because I think I even said it on one of the shows where, you guys are the rock, the middle
that
of
was
the ripple,
with James Corbett, yeah.
and I'm like
Ripple.
one of the outer rings,
Yeah.
But that's what it reaches out to that.
Well, the thing about this show too is that one of the things I'm really passionate about is what's going on in the world and certain injustices. I think when you research these things, it's hard not to be a little upset or not feel like it's information that you want to spread or stories you want to share, and it's because I care for people. I mean, I think it's a natural thing for people to have, empathy. And the thing is that, like, I hear these stories and empathy just completely takes over, and I feel people's pain and I get trapped in it. And then I feel like my way of helping is letting people know what's going on. And again, it's like this whole theory of, am I really making a difference? I don't know. But you know what? I feel like in a small way we are. Like, I know that we have hundreds of downloads. We have hundreds of likes. We have, hundreds of views on YouTube. It's like somebody's watching this. Somebody's listening. And out of all those hundreds or total thousands, through all the shows, something is attracting somebody and might change the way they look at something.
Yeah. And whether it's directly from information they get from the show, it may intrigue them enough to go research it on their own. I know one thing that you've talked about a lot, and we haven't really got into it as a topic, but one thing that seems to when you post on Twitter all the keywords of things that we talk about, Fukushima comes up all the time.
Yeah.
And I've really been kind of looking into that because it's not in the news at all. It's
Yeah.
not in the news at all. And my daughter lives in Hawaii, and you look at the impact that it's having on California, on the people of Japan, on the whole Pacific Ocean, and the things that they're finding. And not, we'll joke about the Kardashians or Miley Cyrus and the Duck Dynasties and all these things that are grabbing the general public's attention, and nobody's paying attention to the fact that the Pacific Ocean may be a vast wasteland in just a few years, and it's amazing.
And the fact that it's not the number one priority for nations to come together, because this isn't just a Japan issue. This is a world issue,
Right.
And it affects, fishermen. It affects, it'll affect everything from people moving from the West Coast, inward because of obviously, radiation,
Right.
levels and stuff like that. So the fact that things, look what happened in West Virginia recently, the fracking, the chemical that went into water.
Yeah, that's
Did you hear that the company went bankrupt? They filed for bankruptcy, right? Right after basically this whole story blew up, and they were fracking, and the idea,
mother frackers.
the thing is that fracking's another thing that I've gotten in a lot of debates with people that swear that it's that it nothing wrong with it, and I'm like, but you're putting chemicals into the ground. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, and if you watch Gasland, the documentary, there's people with, lighters,
Lighting their
water.
tap water.
And the response I always get, that's a few people. I'm like, even if it's just one person, that means it can happen. I mean, the point is, we know it can happen.
How many people are drinking that water that, Jesus, tastes a little funny, that don't even know? I mean, we don't even know the impact of
exactly.
all of this stuff.
And this all goes back to just profit trumping morals and the future of this earth. I mean, you look at it, if you see a picture of this earth from billions of miles away,
not even billions.
Yeah, whatever it is.
It's like from the moon. It's tiny.
It's tiny. And then so it's like, this is the only place we have to live. We can't migrate somewhere else. Newt Gingrich wants to go to the moon eventually, but for the time being, we can't migrate anywhere else. And it's just like, so we're here. So it's like, shouldn't our concern be preserving our resources as much as possible, and not like, let's rape this resource until it's not profitable or we runs out, and then let's rape this resource, let's rape that resource. And it has to stop, because I think the way our economy is built, it's this whole, like, we look at short-term gains, and that's like the most important thing. And I think it affects the way we look at everything, like, where it's all about, let's make decisions that help us right now. And we don't ever want to look into the future. We never want to look ahead and say, this could have some potential damaging, severely damaging effects on our grandkids or on our, it's like, you can't, and that's why, like, it's funny. I just had a conversation with somebody about how they like Alex Jones and they like his passion. I'm like, yeah, but, and then they're like, and I remember hearing Joe Rogan talk about him, and he's like, he's honestly, is that anger comes from the fact that he wants a better place for his kids. He's like, he looks at the government, he looks at the world, he looks at corporations, and he just sees no hope for his kids. And he's like, really, that's the biggest motivator. And I'm like, honestly, if I had kids, it'd probably be a huge motivator to me to think, like, what type of world you're gonna grow up in, and do my part. And as a parent, isn't it like your obligation to basically protect them? Well, what better way to protect them than not just helping them at home and whatnot, and feeding them and housing them, but also working on these bigger issues that might also affect them, and so I understand where that passion comes from, and things anger me. We were talking about before the show, the Obama's State of the Union speech. And, at the end of the State of the Union, he waited till, probably for PR reasons, I hate to say it, but he waited for the last thing he said was to focus on this one, Corey, I can't remember his last name, but he was, went to Afghanistan 10 times. His last time he was there, the 10th time, he hit a landmine, lost vision in his left eye, his left side of his body, barely had any feeling. The poor guy was clapping with one hand on his chest, when it was time to clap, and he was sitting next to Michelle Obama, and it just like, he starts talking about, he did it for democracy. It's like, you look at this, and we talked about this before that we hit record, like, in Iraq, there's hundreds and thousands of stories like that. Americans and Iraqis, in Afghanistan, there's hundreds and thousands of stories. And what have we gained? And the thing is that this all goes back to the idea of linking what's really going on with the words. So we don't have the imagery. And when I watched that, it bothered me so much. And I got so upset, because I just see this poor guy that's never going to have a normal life and is never going to be probably mentally normal. And this guy was deployed 10 times.
I didn't think that was even possible.
Yeah, and he just said it like it was no big. Oh yeah, like it was a great thing. I'm like, this poor guy was deployed 10 times. This happened to him, and what do we gain from it? What how is the world any better? So my point is, like, I think most people who sign up for the military, they want to believe that if their lives are put on the line and they get injured, they obviously do it because they really truly believe in fighting for freedoms for the people at home, and we represent the Constitution and the greatest country in the world, America, and whatnot. And I think that's a noble thing. But I think what's unfair is that these poor kids and these poor adults, or whatever age they are, they get sent and they have no say. So if they're going somewhere and fighting for an unjust reason, they have no say. So you're putting people's lives, and this goes back to the whole thing. One big issue we have is that you can't be pro-military and anti-war. You know, it's like you have to be both. You have to be pro-military and pro-war. And it's just like, no. If the most pro-military thing you can be is anti-war, because I'm anti-war. I think that it should always be a last resort. And in American history, or in, you know, besides like World War II, you know, and some other wars, like, you know, Vietnam, I mean, the Korean War. I mean, how many of these wars was the lives, did the pros and cons even out, or did the pros, you know, increase? You know, it didn't. You know, they haven't made the world a better place. They haven't, you know, the Middle Eastern wars, they haven't helped at all. You know, Iraq's just as bad. If anybody does any research in Iraq, that country is a mess, and it's just as bad, if not worse, than before we went in there. And yet there's plenty of Corys like this guy, this poor guy who come back with a post-traumatic war syndrome, and you know, there's plenty of people like this who will never have a normal life. And who was it for? It was for the Hollenbertons. It was for the KBRs. It was for, these are the people, and taxpayers paid for this shit. So like to see things like that, it just bothered the crap out of me. And you know, it's, the whole thing seems like a illusion, like this whole Democrat Republican thing. The whole thing always seems like theater to me. Like, you have after everything he says, the Democrats clap. Like, you know, I tweeted yesterday, I'm like, if he burps and it says excuse me, I think that Democrats are going to stand up and cheer and clap so hard they're going to pass out. You know, like, it seems like he's not even saying anything with any substance, and people are just getting up and clapping. The whole thing seems just like
I didn't watch it. I haven't watched
but,
the State of
but it's like
Union
they're like all, but they're like all of them. You know what I mean? They're all similar. It's no different than a Republican or a Democratic convention. It's like this whole idea of like this hunter gatherers. We want to be a part of a group, and it's like, I think it's just this wanting to be a part of a group. And I think you feel like you're a part of something. You feel like you're a part of a family. You feel like, oh yeah, we have each other's back. I mean, I forgot what he said at one time. I started laughing because there's like these old women like high-fiving, like, yeah, what he said was great. And I'm like, you guys are acting like a basketball or football team. You know what I mean? Like, they're like all excited. I'm like, nothing changed. Everything he said in the last State of the Union, nothing happened. Yeah. Gitmo is still open. You know, like, drones are still happening. NSA is still spying on us. Like, nothing happened. Nothing changed. And it's like, people still, so it's just the whole thing but it's things like this where I think that, like, my hat goes out to, you know, I take my hat off to the people like James Corbett and the Truth Loader guys and Guy Evans, and these people who aren't afraid to talk about these things, understand the importance of it, and have decided to because even Laura, who works for Truth Loaders, who was on the last episode, she worked for mainstream media, and now she's working for Truth Loader. She probably could have made more money probably working for mainstream media, but she said, like, it's censored. You couldn't talk about certain things and whatnot. So it was appealing to go to the Young Turks, another great alternative news source. The guy who I always forget his name, but the main host and the CEO and the guy who created it, he worked for MSNBC. When he started the Young Turks, he was doing the Young Turks basically on the side when he was doing NBC. And the thing about MSNBC is that there's things that he couldn't talk about there that he would talk about in the Young Turks. So little by little, he's like, dude, I'm not enjoying this, and I'm enjoying this. Yeah. And he's like, and I don't get to talk about the things I want to talk about, you know? So he finally chose, you know, basically, I mean, it's profitable now because he's making a living off it, but he chose doing something that he loved over and that he thought was important over something that was probably financially, you know, the right choice. And you know, that's the thing. Like, all these people, you know, it's the fact that they can, and that's a beautiful thing about technology, is that, you know, we've said this a billion times, it is awesome that we get to do this. 10 years ago or whatever, 15, 20 years ago, we couldn't do this. We couldn't talk to, you know, I couldn't talk to Truth Loaders from the UK. We couldn't talk to James Corbett from Japan. You know, so there's tons of great things that come out of this, and I'm glad that people aren't just using technology for Facebook and Twitter and nonsense, and people are using it. You know, I think you get a lot of the older crowd who have kids, and they say, oh, you know, my kid's always on a computer. And I'm like, listen, it's not a bad thing. I'm like, you can learn a lot from it. You know, you can research and listen, download podcasts and learn something, you know, download an audio book, you know, and basically go on a trip and learn something, or spend some hours on the front of a computer and learn. So it's not, you know, the tool that is causing your kids to be dumb. And
I actually thought about that when I was researching Doug Rushkoff. I watched one of his documentaries that he did on Frontline, and what I started, hear these things, you start to observe how technology is affecting people, and there's really always two ways to look at it. You can look at a table of, one of the things they talked about was sitting at a dinner table and how everybody's occupied with other their different gadgets and devices. But when you can look at it two ways. One is when you look at a table of people, or you see young kids out today hanging out, whatever. Pick four people all on their devices. So amongst the four of them, they're not communicating with each other, or their communication is distracted because of their devices. But on the other end of that device is one or two other people. So that group of four you're looking at is really a group of 8 or 12 people that are interacting. So even though the group of physical four is fractured by paying attention to their devices, they're also adding people that aren't physically there into it. So you can kind of look at it
kind of, but I also think that you're never really it's been proven that we can't multitask.
Yeah.
We're really never really paying. If you're doing a bunch of things at once, you're really not paying attention to any of it.
That's true. That was actually on the Frontline thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they talked about that and how everybody thinks that because they're able to multitask or doing all these things, that they're good at it. But they actually did studies in that actual program.
Yeah. Oh, really?
To show that wasn't the case, that they were crappy at everything rather than being good at it.
Well, and this is another thing that I kind of disagree with Douglas Rushkoff on. And this is the cool thing about this podcast, is that anybody that we've had on, they're completely we're open to them disagreeing with us, and they're open with us disagreeing with them. And this is the whole point of this, is that I want people to learn that conversation is a good thing, and it doesn't necessarily mean talk to people you agree with and avoid people you don't disagree with. It's if somebody's open-minded and they're as willing to listen as they are to talk, then you're going to learn something from it, and you can take something from having conversations with some of the somebody who makes almost no sense, but they're willing to listen to my point. So I'm like, you know what? I owe I'll listen to their point, even if I think they're wrong. And then next thing you know, I end up hearing something that makes sense, So,
yeah.
But one thing he talked about, before I get off track and go on a rant like usual, and it was the whole thing of like, well, he thought it was a good thing that on the internet you have time to kind of write something and think it out. So I think he made the example that, well, what if somebody asks me what's the best way of dealing with the economy or currency or whatever, and he's like, well, I don't have the answer to that, he's like, I want time to think about it. But the thing is, I don't think if you ask somebody that big of a question, I think it's okay to say, I'm not sure, I haven't established an opinion yet. Where like online, you could pretend you established an opinion by only responding after you do this research and then writing it and looking like a genius, when really you haven't looked into it yet. And
I don't think it necessarily meant you have to research it as much as you can give it some thought. I could ask you a question, and I'm sure this happened. We've probably had conversation on this show, and you've probably said some things, and then afterwards, without looking anything up or doing any kind of research, you thought, you know what? Like, you rethink a different angle.
Oh, absolutely.
Of something.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
I think that's what he meant. Not so much research, but to give yourself space to really contemplate what's
but my
being
point
asked.
is it's almost my point is it's okay to say that you haven't established an opinion on something yet. Like, so the alternative is there are a lot of people who get in debates online and on Twitter, on YouTube comments or whatever, and that's what they do. They'll research something immediately, write it, and you don't really know who that person is. You're almost seeing a version of them that doesn't really exist if you talk to them in person. We're like, if maybe you met this person, and you're sitting down having a conversation, they wouldn't sound as intelligent as they would maybe through a Twitter account or whatnot. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but my point is I prefer the organic part, the organic conversation.
I think without technology, the answer you would get would be, that's a good question. Let me think about it. I think that's all right. They'd give you the immediate answer, and then call you up later on and say, hey, you know what? I was thinking about what you asked me, and well, how about this or how about that? You know what I mean? But I think he's just saying it gives you time to pause and think about it, which a lot of the time we don't have the opportunity.
Yeah, I don't remember how I worded the question or how we even got into it, but I just know, like, thinking about it, I prefer the, like, if I had to pick between the two, I think that it's more beneficial to talk to somebody. And if somebody doesn't know something, you know what? If anything, that's almost it feels good when somebody admits they don't know something, because it makes it okay for you to say you don't know something. Because I think we always have this, our egos get in the way and screw everything up, and we're constantly trying to pretend we know things we don't really know, and we're constantly trying, if we don't know something, we'll say whatever we do know to bullshit our way around it, and then research it later, and then
you can't bullshit anymore because everyone whips out their phone as soon as you
well, that's true too, you know? But at least if they're whipping out their phone and be like, well, obviously I know you didn't know that shit because you're trying to Google it now, you know. But I think it's you know, it's a good thing if somebody says, hey, you know, I'm not sure, I haven't established that. To me, if I meet somebody and they say that, it kind of makes me feel like, wow, if this person does say they know something, or you know, if they're giving me some fact that I haven't researched, and I can take the word for it, because if they didn't know it, they wouldn't be saying, you know, because we meet a lot of bullshitters. We know a couple people that will tell you a fact and you'll be like,
I'm one of them.
Well, no, I don't know about that, but we you know, we know people who, and I'm sure we all have run into people where they will throw out a fact that you're not sure about, so you can't argue with them because we're like, well, I guess I'll take your word for it. And then come to find out they're wrong. They're just bullshitting you. They were throwing out some just to help the debate, you know. So I guess my point is that, like, I like that part of being face to face, and the other thing too is, like, one thing you've noticed is like the whole Skype thing, the whole, like, I remember when having meetings, everybody thought that having meetings virtually was going to be the next big thing, because people are going to save on travel, because now, you know, if you're going to have a big corporate meeting, you know, we could just do it through, you know, Skype or whatever, or I know they use some specific program or whatever that everybody can kind of virtually see each other and whatnot. And one thing they found out was that it still wasn't the same as being there. Like, it wasn't the same feel. And even with us Skyping, you know, like, when me and you were having a conversation in person, there's something about social cues, or something about people's facial reactions. Yeah. You know,
well, Skype is about as close as you can get to a real interaction with somebody without. I mean, think about the evolution of communicating with somebody that you're not in the same room with. I mean, we used to write letters, and when you think about evolving from writing letters to talking on a telephone to texting, and now Skype. I'll tell you a story. I was having a conversation with my daughter. She's 5,000 miles away in Hawaii, and we're sitting on our laptops communicating with each other, and just talking about run of the mill stuff, which isn't anything you would talk about if you wrote a letter, because the stuff you would write about in a letter is going to be heavier. But you can have a light conversation through Skype. But anyway, as I'm talking to her, I can see she's like scratching her arm. So I'm like, you know, what's the matter with your arm? She says, oh, I got this rash. And I said, well, do you have anything you can put on it? So she scampers away and goes and gets this little thing of cream. And the whole time she walks away and she's still talking to me. She comes back to the screen. She sits down in front of me, and we're talking, and she scratches, and she grabs this cream and she can't get the cap off. She extends her hand forward to the screen and says, can you open this for me? And like, my heart sank, because I realized at that moment, my daughter felt like I was right there with her. You know what I mean? So you can't. Oh,
you don't think it was like sarcasm?
No,
like,
she meant it, because we were having such an intimate conversation, and it was so real that she
almost felt
without
like
even thinking
she almost
about
forgot
it,
that
she
you
almost
weren't
forgot
there.
that we were 5,000 miles apart, and we were communicating through devices. And I think that's a huge thing. And you see all the time. You'll see
my buddy Marcin, who got married not so long ago. During his wedding, they had I don't know if it was a tablet or laptop open, and his family from Poland was watching the wedding. And I remember being at the wedding. I'm like, there's a kid on his couch watching, you know, this wedding, and he's in Poland. Like,
I think that's crazy. A huge deal. Like that experience with my daughter and the cream. I thought that was, to me, that was such a close physical thing to me, despite the fact that we were separated. And, you know, people on a couch watching a wedding could care less. You don't know. But if these are family members that are close to Marcin and really wanted to be there, and oh my God, I so want to be there. You know, if your husband or wife is in Afghanistan, and you have your father or mother is in Afghanistan, and you have an opportunity to communicate through Skype, that's so huge compared to, you know, think about World War II. Guys are writing letters, and 2 weeks later they get a letter back, and it's like, it's so distant and so removed. But,
Well,
but nowadays,
it makes the and kind of like, you know, in your story, it makes the world feel smaller, you know.
yeah, and that's the whole thing. Like when you talk about technology and how it separates us, because if we're together in the same room, and I'm looking at my phone and you're looking at your phone, then yeah, it definitely puts a barrier between us. But if I'm talking to somebody that I couldn't otherwise be with, and I'm spending time looking at them, and you talk about, you know, when you really think about communication and how much is lost in written communication versus face to face, and all the verbal cues and all the physical things, and you know, you can type something to somebody through a you have misunderstandings by text message all the time.
Yeah,
you end
especially if you're drunk.
Yeah, you end up having arguments with people and like, what's the matter?
Just because you misunderstood.
Because you misunderstood the
or
tone.
Or you can't see, yeah, the tone. That's huge.
You cannot. Yeah. You can through Skype. I know when my daughter's in a good mood or a bad mood or happy or sad.
I think
just by looking at her.
I think my whole point is that I just want to eliminate the trolls, the people who go online and just will, you know, there's so many people online who will just go online and just comment on all, like, find some mistake you said on some fact or whatever, and just wail the shit at you. And it's just like, listen, buddy, I know if I met you in fucking person, you wouldn't know all this shit. You know?
Yeah, you're right.
So it's like, stop trying to correct me, and not so much us, because we're not that big of a show yet, where I have, like, you know, we have all these trolls or whatnot, and hopefully eventually we will, because that means that we're doing something right. But the thing is that, you know, I hear it all the time on other shows, on other, you know, popular and famous people. Like, they talk about how, like, well, I got to get this fact right, because if not, I'm going to get 1,000 Twitter.
I'll tell you what. I'll read some stories on the internet. You know, I use MSN as a homepage, and I'll click on a few stories here and there through the day. But more interesting and amusing than stories that I read is if you scroll down to the comments that people write.
There's some clever people.
There are there are geniuses out there just waiting to be discovered. I'll laugh my ass off at some of the comments more so than a story. It's really amazing how people, I don't know what these people do all day other than comment on stories, but some of the stuff is just genius. Even with Twitter, I'll listen to the Hillman Morning Show on WAF, and they'll tweet stuff out, and they really incorporate Twitter with their morning show.
They do a good job with that. Like,
they definitely do.
They'll say, you know, there'll be a chick that they're talking about, and then they'll show you a picture. They'll show you, be like, oh, I just tweeted this picture.
This is the bus driver that got arrested for doing this. And you like it really. I think that's a great use of a visual media that enhances an already funny show. But what it also opens up is they do a good job of incorporating listener phone calls into the show. But when you hear a topic that they're talking about, and then
you can put a face to it,
then they tweet a picture, and you start looking at the replies. There are some funny people out there. It's amazing how.
See, and that's when, you know,
and that's enhancing.
Yeah, that's enhancing, absolutely. And the ones that suck are when I'm watching a basketball game, and then they say LeBron James just tweeted this, and it's like, oh shit, did you see Durant's dunk? You know, and I'm like, why are you getting in the way of my basketball game to let me know what LeBron James thought of, you know, Kevin Durant's dunk? Like, that is not enhancing anything. That's just getting in the way, you know. So it's just, there's definitely pros and cons. I mean, my big thing is I still enjoy meeting people. I enjoy the in-person thing. I think that there's something, you know, there's a connection that you can make with people in person that you can't necessarily make.
100% agree.
You know,
with that.
And but, you know, when the Douglas Rushkoff, and you know who we haven't talked about, Jason Burmis, which was an awesome guest. Like,
he was incredible.
Dude, he is so knowledgeable.
We haven't talked about Daniele Bonelli either.
And that's the other thing, is that I don't want people to get the wrong idea. We're not only going to have these type of people. Like, the cool thing about Daniele Bonelli and Douglas Rushkoff and hopefully some other guests that we have coming is that we want to hit. When I say I want to talk about interesting topics, I don't just mean like alternative news or politics or social issues. I mean anything from technology to religion to and the whole idea is that talk to, you know, be open-minded to all different perspectives and all different ideas. If you agree with it or don't agree with it, you know, that's not the point. The point is that you can always take something from it. You know, Daniele Bonelli has a great...
I think we slaughter his name every time we say that, by the way. I'm still
How
not sure.
do you think you say his last name?
Isn't it Bolelli?
But maybe.
I don't think there's an N in there.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. I don't know.
No, there's not an N. It's like B-O-L...
Bolelli.
Yeah, Bolelli. And how do we say it?
It's Daniele Bolelli, but it's
Listen, if people listen
to
to the
an
show,
American
they
tongue,
are
it's
so
hard to
used
say.
to we
we hack everything. But
yeah.
that to me, from on a spiritual level, that having him on as a guest was I think, because I had read his book prior to having him on, and I think I related to him more than any other guest. Him and Rushkoff were the people that I related to the most, and part of that I would think is because of the age. I think I'm age-wise closest.
Well, I think it's also because they're both not they're motivated not just by political or social issues, but
Yeah.
they have their other interests, and I think the younger generation, like I'm growing up. I'm freaking almost 30. But the point is that, like, I feel like there's a younger crowd now that kind of grew up either right in the beginning when internet got big or soon after, and we kind of have the benefit of like being exposed to all this news and all this research that we can do. And I think that you look at like a lot of these alternative news people, like they're fairly young, Jason Berm is I think a couple years older than me, not that much older. The Truth Loader guys and gals,
They seem really young. I don't know how old they are, but they seem pretty young.
And but I think a lot of it is the reason why and it's good because I think mainstream media, you can't go to mainstream media for journalism anymore. You don't, you're not going to have a Hunter S. Thompson or somebody who makes a living saying whatever the hell he wants, and you're just not going to be put on TV. People aren't going to, you can't be controversial. It's like you have to be the Honda Civic, you have to be that model or that Camry, you have to be that thing that doesn't offend anybody. You have
Rolling Stone used to be the most progressive. You talk about.
Well, they piss off a lot of people when they put the Boston Bomber in front of the cover.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it's provocative. Like a Matt Tabby or a Hunter S. Thompson. Those people were always they were mainstream journalism cutting edge. Rolling Stone always had the alternative news story.
Hunter, he worked for Rolling Stone.
I think
right?
he did. Yeah. So a lot of good media people came out of Rolling Stone, but they always presented like a non-mainstream perspective on a lot of things. But that I don't know how Rolling Stone is doing nowadays, but there are so many media outlets that
we have
that
more
are serving
options.
that purpose.
Yeah, we do, and
it makes Rolling Stone look mainstream.
Yeah, maybe, and again, I don't read Rolling Stone, but that probably could be, that might be the case that they might still be cutting edge. I just don't know it. But the nice thing is that even if you don't, I mean, what's a book? Nobody reads anymore.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you have other ways of getting your information out, and you have plenty of options, and that's why that net neutrality thing which we briefly brought up on the last show with Truth Loader guys. And I feel bad saying guys because it was Laura was on, but I don't literally mean guys. I mean
gang,
crew, yeah. And
folks,
the net neutrality thing, and like that, and like the SOPA thing. Like I really feel like our best line of defense is the internet. Like we have all this. The one thing they haven't taken.
But in saying that, the powers that be recognize that too, and they're.
You sound like James Corbett. He always has powers to be.
They got to find a way to usurp that power from the people, and money is the ultimate motivator for anything. If you can pay a internet service provider to speed your product up and slow someone else's product
well, that's
down,
what net neutrality is.
That's what's going to happen. That's going to happen.
Verizon has this giant BS about well, if we're trying to make it better and there's all this, and it's like, no, what you're going to do is you're going to basically affect bandwidth, and people are going to be able to pay to make their websites faster or slower, and chances are we're going to probably get some of that cost, and or the other option is that there's going to be websites we like that aren't quite as popular. They're going to be slow.
Well, it's already that way anyway. I mean, in terms of search engines, you can already pay to have. I mean, when I made my website for the Other 16, I went around and manually entered. There's ways to get your website out there and into search engines when people search.
Yeah, but you're talking about like tags.
Words. Yeah.
Yeah, I do that with all our videos and all our episodes. Like you tag a bunch of stuff, and
but you can also pay to have that done. So in a sense, it's kind of the same thing. You can pay.
Yeah, but it's
to make your website be the first thing that comes up.
My thing is that what you're doing, you're paying for a service that might help, I guess, advertise or sponsor, but net neutrality wouldn't actually make things better, what they're actually doing is taking something away, because right now everything's fast. What they would actually do is slow down certain things and then pay to make things fast again.
Oh, okay.
You know,
All right.
so you know,
Well, same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. You're paying you're
I feel
paying
like-
a premium to be premium. You know.
Yeah, I think the big issue is taking something away we already have.
Yeah.
It's the fact that we already have something at this speed. Now you're taking that away and gonna charge us for it. And you know, the big thing is that we don't have options either, because you look at it like if you live in certain towns or you live in certain places, you only have Comcast, you only have Charter,
Yeah, I
you only
can't
have
stand that.
you only have, so because of it, you don't have the free market to say, well, you can go to whatever, you know, if somebody wants to give you a better deal or whatever, like you're kind of screwed. So it's not like the sponsor thing is that anybody can pay for it, anybody can choose not to pay for it. You have options. You know, you don't have options with this. Like if you live in a town where Verizon, you know, is who gives you your internet, and basically they have some ridiculous charges for whatever, you don't have an option to say, hey, I'm going to boycott these guys, I'm going to go somewhere else. Like
I may not be right about this, but my understanding is that it's up to your municipality to enter into contracts with these cable companies.
Yeah, you're right.
And they don't necessarily pick the cable company that's in your best interest.
In their best interest.
If a cable company is going to come in and say, we're going to give you $600,000 for local cable access channel and provide you with this and this and this, then the town is going to sign on to that without looking at what's best for the community, the individuals in the community. What services do they want? So their decision is based on how the town benefits rather than the individuals in the town benefit. So
yeah, it's the lowest bidder.
Right.
Yeah.
But the towns will receive compensation through the cable company. They'll provide the town, whether it's the town hall, the police department, or whatever, with certain access, with funds for local programming and things like that, and that's how they entice towns to sign on with that service provider. That's my understanding. It's not like they come in and say, this is what we're going to do for your customers. We're going to give them these, you know, we're going to bundle phone, internet, and TV at this price. And then the next person comes in and says, well, we're going to do it for this price. I don't think it's done that way. I think it's done like, we're going to come in, we're going to supply the infrastructure, we're going to give you guys whatever equipment you need, we're going to give you we're going to give you money to build your local community cable access, you know, system and things like that. So the town makes the decision based on what the town will receive, not what the customers, the townspeople get.
Yeah, so basically, they're, like you said, they're looking after their own interests,
Right,
which makes this whole thing even suckier, because basically, you know, we have no control over that, you know, that negotiating or whatnot, or that bidding process. So where you live is you get what you get,
Right.
and I think that's where the big issue is. Where if you had tons of companies to choose from, like it's controlled by a handful of companies, you know, so it's just, you don't have options, you know. That's the big thing, is that it's like this whole idea of you know, we have options, and we don't, in so many different situations, we don't have options. You know, we don't, you know, you have a handful of corporations running this market or running that market or whatever, you know, and this is a perfect example. So, and the thing is about the internet is that everybody uses it, everybody's used to it a certain way, and I feel like I'm hoping if there was some major change, if something like SOPA, you know, or something that would affect privacy, or not privacy, but paying for certain things, or affect the ability to upload certain things, you know, like the SOPA thing was, the big thing was, you know, just uploading anything that had anybody else's music or a little clip from a movie or whatever, even if you're using it for things that weren't even profitable. If you're just uploading a video on YouTube and there's no way making profit, you were dancing in front of a TV that had like some movie on, you know, and so it's all these things that would restrict you from doing all these. It just, right now it's like this, like the internet is like this beautiful place where it's like we have the freedom to do what we want. We have the freedom to kind of, you know, it's what like the world should be. It's like, it's no different than like kind of when Douglas Rushkoff was talking about like a open source mentality, kind of using that in like with humanity, and it's you know, it's the internet's kind of like, that's how we're gonna get there, you know. It's like, it's that type of thinking that like, it's okay with things being free and nobody asking for anything and just enjoying it, you know.
Right,
and then
right.
it's kind of, I mean, imagine if we had to pay for, for YouTube, you know, or if we had to pay for, you know, all these things.
Well, we do in a sense, because I remember watching YouTube videos and not seeing ads. Now you have to watch a 15-second
Yeah.
ad to watch a 10-second
But
video.
I'd rather, and this goes back to, like, people are always like, how do you make money off podcasts? And or, you know, you have people like James Corbett, who has subscribers and donators, and you have like the Young Turks, you know, the same thing, and Joe Rogan sells, you know, T-shirts and whatnot. I'm okay with the fact that if there's a commercial or there's some little ad, I'm okay with that, because I can choose to turn it off or not watch it.
Right.
But when I have to pay for something, like, you know, I understand that, you know, you have to make a living, or a lot of these people want to make a living, you know, doing this. And if that means that putting this commercial before, I think even Joe Rogan now does some ads. I've seen some ads before his video episodes. And if that means I have to watch 15 seconds of a video and it helps him continue doing what I'm enjoying, and I don't have to pay for it, I just have to kind of sit through.
Yeah, that's true.
Then I can live with that. You know, I think I can live with. I think it's when you're asking. I think it's easier to live with something like that than it is to go to your wallet and pay for something.
Yeah.
You know, it's you know. So I think it's getting to a point where people who want to make a living doing things like podcasting or alternative news, they have to start getting creative with how, and that's one of the ways they've done it is the ads before YouTube videos. And
yeah, but who decides what ad precedes a YouTube video? Does Joe Rogan have any say in?
I don't know how that works. I know
on YouTube?
I've seen, you know, on our channel, I've seen you know, just some little inbox messages about if I would want to do it or whatnot. I've kind of, you know, the way I look at it is that I'm not going to make enough money off it to make it worthwhile. So it's like, what's the point of bothering people with an ad? You know, it's like, to me, it's not worth doing, you know, unless it was to the point where we had millions and millions of followers and I could do this for a living, and all I would have to do is make somebody sit through a 15-second ad.
Well, you know what's funny is I've noticed that when something is a quick flash media thing, I'll give you an example. The football game, the Patriots Broncos game, when Bill Belichick called Wes Welker out on the hit on Aqib Talib. If you went on YouTube to find that clip there were 20 different. That same clip was posted by 20 different people, and what I suppose is that if that's a hot media topic that people are going to want to. Like, because that's what I did. I'm like, well, I got to see this for myself and see if this was a
somebody's blowing it out of proportion.
So of course, the first place you go is to YouTube to check out this clip. Now, if somebody posts that and suddenly they're getting a lot of hits because it's something that is attracting attention, then they can start collecting money off of attaching an ad to it. So I think what ends up happening.
But if it's not their video, I'm not sure they can do that.
I don't know.
I think if you're like, whoever recorded, if you're one of the media that's there and you recorded it with your own video camcorder or whatever, and then it's your tape.
But if you have a YouTube account,
I don't think I can just upload it and do it, because
there had to be 10
with ads.
I don't know. The one that I watched didn't have an ad. But
see, and that's the thing. My point is, I think you can upload, as long as you're not making any money off it. You can upload it.
But I think what if you have an ongoing relationship with YouTube where they do attach ads to your things, and then you add a video.
And you sneak it in there?
Yeah.
No, because they have recognition stuff. I don't know if I've told you, but I got flagged for my own song. Did I tell you this? On our last two?
Oh, yeah, you did.
Yeah. And it's just like, so basically what happened was the last two episodes, for some reason, we used the same intro song, you know, the 36 Ripple Effect song, which you can get. I feel like a prostitute, which you can get on iTunes and whatnot. But they basically flagged it, and I uploaded the video. Like 10 seconds later, I go to play to make sure it's working, and it says error or whatever. And then I go to you know, my account, and I'm just like, what the fuck's going on? And it says, oh, it's been flagged for third-party content or whatever. And I'm just like, third party. I'm like,
how do you get around that? You have to give yourself permission somehow.
What do you mean? How do you get around being flagged? Well, they have a software that finds.
No, but so what? You have to submit writing to yourself. You have to ask yourself.
No, so so then they say, do you want to dispute it? And the thing is that they want to. I think that because if everybody disputed it, it'd be such a large amount of things they would have to go through. So to minimize it, they kind of try to scare you a little bit. They're like, if you dispute this and you're wrong, then we'll shut down your YouTube account. So are you sure you want to dispute it? You know, like making sure that nobody's just wasting their time. You know, which makes sense. And so I'm like, yeah, I want to dispute. And then you can put a little comment on what's your debate. I'm like, this song.
That's my song.
Yeah, well, it came up and it said you are using Theory 6's song, The Ripple Effect. I'm like, I know, it's my song. And I'm like, the weird thing is I had the video up on our channel when I first released the song. Before it was even for sale, it was already had the video up on YouTube. I've used it. It's the same song. I haven't changed anything. It's been the same song for every intro for every single Ripple Effect podcast. So why it's getting flagged now, I don't know. I don't know if it's like new software or if it's become quicker or what it is. But you know, it's that type of stuff. But I mean, it's amazing how quickly you look at.
Well,
how many thousands and millions of YouTube uploads are? I mean, YouTube is like basically has a monopoly with uploading videos.
Well, like that Welker hit, there was 20 that morning. You know? Like it's so fluid. It's constantly growing and changing.
Yeah, and yet like in no time it flagged it and found it.
Well,
it's no different than
what
like
if you
Shazam.
what if we wanted to use someone's song instead of your song?
I think you.
How do you do that?
I think you could dispute it and say I'm not making money off it or whatever I'm doing. There's no profit. I think that you can do because I think that there's like things you could click to kind of you could write a literal or not literal, but you could actually type out a small little paragraph explaining your dispute. But there's also a couple little boxes you could check that were the closest to your issue, you know, or
okay.
So, and I think one of them was
I'm not making money off of this.
Yeah, I'm not making. Yeah, exactly.
I actually did. I put together a cheesy video when I went to France and went through my grandfather's, you know, to his battle site and everything like that. I put together a kind of like a slideshow for the website, and I used a song called Greenfield of France, which is it's a song about World War I, which is it's public domain because it's over 50 years old. But the version I used was a redone. It was redone by the Dropkick Murphys.
Oh, so technically it's not the same song.
So it's not. So I guess in a way it's not the same song. So the Dropkick Murphys can use it for nothing, but I can't use their version. But I'm sure, like, if I ran into the Dropkick Murphys and said, "Hey, do you mind if I do this?" They'd be like, "Yeah," you know, like they.
The hard
care.
part is getting a hold of people.
So how do you do that? Like,
well, it's no different.
What
than
do I do? Get it in writing and then mail it to YouTube? How does that work?
Yeah, I don't know how that works. Or you have to get Dropkick Murphys to agree to it. I don't know.
But how would I prove that?
So what happened was that your video.
So they took the video down. They took the video down.
You could probably disputed it.
Well, you know. It was the only video I ever made and ever posted on YouTube, and I did it through. I don't even know the account. Like I made up an account to do it.
Yeah.
With the intention of maybe I'll do this again. It was actually kind of easy. I never did it again, so I don't even know the account name, the
just
password.
open up another one, upload it again, and then dispute it, and say, hey, you know, I'm not making.
So
a
they
profit.
probably sent me emails like, hey, you got to dispute this or whatever, and
yeah,
I just never got them.
If you go to like Video Manager and then it goes like near your video, if there's an issue, it'll tell you.
I'll send you the video. You can post it up on your Theory 6 thing.
It's a Theory 6.
You take care of everything else. I'll let you take care of that.
I could upload it absolutely, and but yeah, it's amazing how fast they find it, and but the other thing is you know, how do you get a hold of somebody? For example, the song "The Ripple Effect," Graham Hancock, you know, talks in the beginning of the podcast. Everybody who I use samples from and quoted from in that song, I emailed and tried to get a hold of in every way possible. Facebooked them, try to, you know, figure out like. I want to let them know that before I put the song up online, I want them to listen to it and just give me the okay that they don't mind, you know? And I couldn't get a hold of anybody. You know, eventually, you know, me and Graham Hancock end up talking via email, and I end up sending him the song. I'm like, I was inviting him on the podcast, and he was busy at the time, and I'm just like, oh, by the way, you know, while I got your attention, I got you in the song. Then I'm like, I hope there's no issues or whatever. I'm like, I tried to get a hold of you, I couldn't, but here's the song, you know. And I'm just like crossing my fingers. Hopefully he's not.
Is that even like is someone's spoken word in conversation?
I don't know. I guess it was more the fear of like I didn't want to piss anybody off because they're people I like.
No, you're right. You're right.
And two, legally, I wasn't sure I was doing anything wrong because I modified them because obviously to kind of give it the dark kind of sound, like you add effects and you cut it up so it goes with the beat a little bit, because then sometimes the pace that they're talking might be faster than the pace of the song. So you do all these little things, and I think technically if you change something, it's not the same anymore. And because this is a conversation I had actually with my buddy Bill and his friend Mark not too long ago. We're talking about how how Vanilla Ice had the
Oh,
yeah.
doon 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 doon.
And Bill's like, it was obviously the same beat. I'm like, it was, but it wasn't, because every single guitar chord, every single note has been played already.
Right.
If you don't let one little note change be a different beat, technically it is. Like me going on the drums do, and then me going on the drums do. It's just one more kick drum, but it's a different beat.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you don't let that, if you don't declare that as something different, then we would be completely limited with what we could play. We'd be out of shit. Everything's already been played 1,000 times already. I mean, I've heard CDs from other bands that I know they probably didn't rip it off from another band, but I'm like, that riff sounds just like that riff from,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh shit, it is a similar riff. But I'm sure it was just, obviously, it wasn't on purpose. It's no different than you hear comedians talk about jokes, how like sometimes people are actually stealing jokes, but other times you just wrote a joke.
I've actually done that on Twitter, where in my own mind I'll think of something and then post it, and then I'll find it somewhere else and be like,
yeah.
it's similar to something that I said. And I'm like, that kind of blows my mind.
Wasn't that the internet? You came up with the internet, and you're like,
Yeah.
wait, somebody else.
And then Al Gore took credit
Son
for
of a
it
bitch.
after I took credit for it first. So
The interweb.
yeah, but it's weird how that happens. It's weird how many similar people are out there. I mean, there's probably two guys sitting in the basements in some other part of the world right now with the wave effect. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they have this. They're doing the same exact thing. I'll meet people through through Twitter. I'll meet a lot of people through obviously through the same interests that you have. Like I'll meet a lot of people through Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam fans will post pictures or whatever. And then, I'll see that it'll be retweeted and stuff like that. And you'll check out someone's profile. I found this guy who had a daughter who like literally the same pictures that I'm posting, not in the same order, but the same basic stuff. I'm like, this is creepy how much this guy is
similar.
just like me.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, but I think that it's always been like that. I just think now
you have access to that.
Well, you know what? Now that I think of it, maybe it couldn't always be like that, because I think now we all have access to the same stuff. When you had somebody in Portugal or somebody in India and somebody in like Canada, they didn't all have access to the same music, same information. So I think people were probably more different then. Where like now you can have more similarities because we all have access to almost the same things, the same like somebody in some country that didn't have internet.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. I'm just gonna do a crappy job explaining it.
No,
but,
I understand what you mean.
So
because everything is so available it's so universally available
that people all over the world can be influenced by the same things.
Exactly,
and
exactly. Like a band like Pearl Jam is big they're in Australia, or just wrapped up a Australian tour. So all these Australian fans have been posting about the big day out, and they're posting set lists, and I'm like, oh my god, I was posting pictures of pictures that I took at shows that I saw, and basically the same pictures, they're using the same set and same stage show and basically that kind of stuff, and like, oh, I want to hear this song, or they played this song. It's just weird, not like it's like a wave. It happened up here, now it's happening down there, and they're going to Europe, and that's the next tour, so it's gonna happen again. It's just bizarre how that happens.
That's one of those positives of the internet and technology. And the crazy thing about technology is that we never know where it's going to take us. Like we talked briefly about Bitcoin before the show.
Yeah, which I still
that's
don't.
fucking but people. It's funny because I first heard about it like 2-3 years ago. This guy David Seaman, who does a podcast, he talked about it, and he said it's gonna be it's not a bad investment. It's a tad risky. But the thing is, this guy Andrew, or what was his name? That we were just listening to him.
We just watched
He's like this Bitcoin expert. He was just on the Joe Rogan podcast. He was on RT's Breaking the Set with Abby Martins, and super genius when it comes down to Bitcoin. And one thing that he said, he's like, he can't be 100% sure that Bitcoin's going to be the one that lasts. But the one thing he's 100% sure about is that this technology can never be undone. The fact that this works can never be forgotten.
Right.
And it's going to be the future. And some type of digital currency like this is going to be the future of currency. It makes sense because you don't have Federal Reserves or banks or whatever affecting inflation. You don't have these incredible fees for transferring money.
That was the most appealing thing when he was talking about that. I mean, I use PayPal a lot now, and initially when I started, I was afraid. I was afraid of it. And we always are afraid of new technologies, and I was afraid of it when I first started using it. Now I love it. I wish I could use it for more things, but he compared it to PayPal in its simplicity to use. But every now and then you pay fees to transfer money and do certain things depending on what you're doing, and the cost to work through Bitcoin is like small money.
If anything, like most of the time it's nothing, and there's people who are making income strictly through Bitcoin. There's people who are buying things strictly through Bitcoin. It's basically, for people who don't know, it's like a digital currency. It has value in, well, let's be honest, the American dollar doesn't have any, it's not backed by gold anymore. So like the value is kind of just, it's the fact that the petrodollar, it's the idea that countries buy and sell oil using the American dollar, so it gives it value in that manner, which a lot of people think that ends up influencing a lot of our foreign policy, is the fact that we have to continue to make sure that the American dollar has value, or keeps some type of value, even though the value's already gone down like crazy. But the whole idea is that because it's limited, its value it's because I forget how many, I'm gonna make up a number, but they're gonna have a maximum of 200 million bitcoins, or 1 billion bitcoins, and so then after that happens, as it's in higher demand and they're rarer, then the value of a bitcoin will go up. So just the same way that you can get a dime, and or a nickel or whatever, and a bitcoin would be like $1, but you can buy fractions of it. So when I remember, like years ago, when I first heard about Bitcoin, one Bitcoin was like $20, and now it's like 800 and something bucks, or pretty close to $800. And so you don't have to buy a full Bitcoin. You could buy $10 worth of Bitcoin, $20 worth of Bitcoin, and because it's digital, the guy who created it, it's funny how we're always really fascinated with like conspiracies and like mysteries, and I think that's one of the things that I think always kind of motivates me to do research on things, because I'm always like really curious. There's something that's just so fascinating about the unknown, and it's like people talked about like Bigfoot for a while, and I'm just like, it's a hairy big monkey. If we found it and we just, like, if we didn't know what a gorilla was and people just saw this one gorilla randomly in the woods, we'd be fascinated with it. But once we know what it is, it's like, it's no big deal.
Once we catch it, we're gonna be like, we're all gonna gather around and be like, okay, that's Bigfoot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, it's not the actual thing that might be fascinating. It's the idea that we don't know what it is that's fascinating. And so same thing with the guy who created it. Nobody knows who created it. Like, it could be a group of people. It could be people assume that English is his first language, even though he has a Japanese name. The guy that wrote the software, the program, and created this, and people way smarter than me explains it. Basically says how mathematically it's flawless, it's perfect, it works, it's not going to go away. People are already investing in it, and I think people who want to take some power away from the banks and want to take power away from the Fed and are going to invest in it. And I think it's the future. The fact that you can, use one currency and then, basically in seconds, I can basically put it in my virtual wallet from my cell phone to your virtual wallet. And people are like, well, you can steal somebody's Bitcoin. Well, the same way you could steal somebody's ATM card and if you have their PIN, yeah, you can steal their money. Same way you can steal Bitcoin from people, So, I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't know too much about it. It's funny because it's not that I haven't done, not that I haven't done any research on it. I'm not a tech expert to be able to take what I've heard and kind of forward the information in an intelligent sounding way. But it's very interesting, and I think it eventually, if it's not and there's other ones too. It's not the only one. But it's the one that really picked up steam, and it seems, I think it's going to be the one that lasts. And there's already people who invested really early who are now millionaires. Yeah. Like they just told a story about this guy on Twitter who basically tweeted, I bought Bitcoin a while ago or whatever, this and that. He's like, now the price is this. He's like, I'm just checking. Am I a millionaire? Is this for real? And the guy ends up like being a millionaire because he invested whatever, you probably if you bought like $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, when it was $10 a Bitcoin, now you got some serious money, Yeah. So, but it's interesting. But it goes back to technology, how like nobody saw this coming, the same way for people who say, oh, we're so used to paper money. guess what? When paper money was the norm, using a credit card seemed weird. Like now you look at it, we've transferred to digital currency already.
That's really true. That's
because
really
you look
true.
at it, like people are like, "Oh, well, digital currency is not going to work." I'm like, it already has happened. We buy things and sell things and transfer money all the time with never actually seeing physical money.
Yeah.
We do it all the time. I pay bills. I get paid. I go buy things with digital money. It's digital money. It's ones and zeros that go from one computer to another. You never see it. So it's like Bitcoin's not that far-fetched.
Right.
You know, we kind of already have become, and the same way that when people first got debit cards and credit cards, it seemed kind of weird because it's like, wait, I'm swiping this thing and is somebody going to steal my money? Is somebody going to, you know, like this unknown kind of scares you. And I think Bitcoin is scaring people, but it's really not that much different than what we're probably already used to. Just instead of saying we're moving ones and zeros that represent dollars, we're moving ones and zeros from one digital device to another that represents Bitcoins. So it's not that, but it is amazing how you know, at one time even currency started off as like, you know, people talk about like shells, like they use shells or like knots on a rope. I've heard all types of things, like the beginning of like the first currency. And it's like, when you look in the future, it's amazing how little we ever know where things are really going to go. You know, it's like that movie that just came out or is coming out. I wanted to bring up the Douglas Ruskoff, but it fucking sucks because every time we're a guest a show's over and I'm like, fuck, I wanted to ask him about that and I completely forgot. But that movie, Her, about the guy who falls in love with the machine.
Oh,
That's
okay.
It's female voiced. I haven't watched it, but the concept is interesting. The idea that like we're gonna have artificial intelligence, and you at one point you could almost fall in love with a machine. You know, you could fall in love with, you know.
Well, it happens. I mean, what was it? Manti Te'o fell in love with.
That's right.
An unreal.
You know what's funny? I just watched this documentary called because I don't just only watch conspiracy theories and and corporate corruption. I try to watch anything that's interesting, and I just watched this really interesting documentary called TalHotBlond, and it's all one word, and Tall only has one L. It kind of looks like a screen name, right? That somebody would use for AIM, and come to find out when I watched the movie, that's exactly what it was. And this is the type of crazy stuff that stories that documentaries will tell that will just blow your mind. So basically what happened was, there's this dude who he had like a really like fallen apart marriage, wasn't, you know, they had no sex, no intimacy whatsoever. Marriage was kind of just whatever, seemed content. He would go online and play these games in these chat rooms and play poker online and always be in these chat rooms talking to people. Well, he was in some like chat room, and it was I guess I can't remember if he accidentally went in it or whatnot. The point is, he was in the chat room and he ended up talking to this girl who was like 18, right? And he's just like, oh, hey, what's up? And she asked, you know, how old he was, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm 18. No. You know, he's like, because I guess his explanation was that he was scared that it was a cop undercover, and that, which doesn't really make any sense, but and he was going to get in trouble, so he just kind of pretend that he wasn't in that chat room trying to pick up younger people, you know, that he was 18 also. So come to find out, he ends up falling in love with this girl. Like he basically, they start talking this and that. He makes up this whole story of like his name's Tom and he's in the Marines, and she sends pictures of him right away, and like has all these pictures of this, you know, this cute blonde girl, you know, with at graduation, and they end up creating this relationship, and so the whole thing happens on eventually his wife finds out about it, right? Says the shit has to end. You have to cut connections with her. So he ends up coming out telling her the truth, you know, that, hey, I'm this and that. No. But she's like, but I fell in love with this basically this person that you sold me. Like, she fell in love with him. Like, she would send him like panties and all this stuff. And you know, so whatever, that happened. So eventually she starts seeing this other kid that he worked with, and that basically was also another kid that hung out in the same websites and this and that she was familiar with. So she started talking to. She did it to make him jealous, this other guy, because she was pissed off that he lied to her. Come to find out, what ends up happening is that this guy gets so jealous, and she kind of plays mind games with him and like stops talking to him and then hits him up again. But I'm still in love with that guy, you know, whatever. He ends up killing this other kid one day, right?
This is a true story?
There's a true story. He gets obsessed with the fact that she's seeing somebody else. And basically one day after work, this younger kid, you know, was in his car, goes up, shoots him, and kills him. He gets arrested, right? So now the cops go to this house to go find this girl because, to basically figure out, like, get some information, like what's going on, trying to talk to her, this and that. Because I think at the time they didn't know it was him, but they had a feeling it was him, and they wanted to talk to her and put the pieces together. Well, the cops showed up there. This older woman comes to the door, and she's like, "Oh, is I think her name was Jessie. Is Jessie here?" And this woman, like, gets really, like, nervous, and she's like, "Oh, my daughter, no, that's my daughter. She's not here." It's like, "Oh, there's any way getting in contact with her?" No, she's away in college. No. And the cops are like, "Wait, how do you not in contact with your daughter? That seems weird, And I am completely fucking up anybody who wants to watch this movie. Sorry.
I'm
But it's
getting
intriguing.
lost, but I gotta hear.
So come to find out, what ends up happening is that this woman, okay, was sending pictures of her daughter, pretending she was an 18-year-old girl, and the panties and the pictures, everything was her daughter's. She would send pictures like, "Oh, how's my ass look in this picture? This and that." It'd be her daughter.
Ugh.
And it was this older, like 40-something-year-old woman, and it was an amazing story because, one, it showed you the IMs, and they're so personal. It's no different than, like, showing text messages through people, like.
So they were both, in the end, they were both.
They're both lying, yeah. And this guy ends up killing somebody for somebody who didn't exist, and it was so crazy because I'm like, it's only something that could happen with technology, and like, and it was such an interesting, and I love stories like that because. Obviously it's tragic and it sucks, but it shows how lonely some people are. Like, really what caused all this loneliness? Those two older people who were content in life, and or convinced themselves they're content in life and really were unhappy.
Yeah.
And we're in miserable relationships. We're unhappy, and we're looking for some type of connection with people. And the thing about internet, yeah, you can't connect with other people, but it's not real, and unfortunately you can be lied to and all these other things. And it just, I love these true stories of trying to understand. It's almost like a psychology class where you're watching people in situations, and you're seeing how they react, how they respond, what pushes people over the edge, how you can mess around with emotions. Because this guy was, that act was an act of lust, or not lust, but I don't know what you call it, but it was basically just,
jealousy.
Yeah, jealousy, whatever. And it's amazing story. And there's tons of stories like that. But I know I got off track. I don't even know how to start talking about that. But I just watched that documentary, and it kind of blew my mind because it was such an interesting documentary, and it just reminded me, because obviously technology, and it was one of those things where just like, AIMing something so innocent that could create this stuff. And I think that's another fear too, is that you have a daughter, and the fear that access to information is a good thing, but you also have access to a lot of bad things, like this. And is that a concern you ever worry about?
Oh, absolutely. I talk about that stuff with her, and her mom talks about that stuff with her constantly. You know what I mean? She's not running amok on the internet. She does certain things.
But you're okay with something that I hear a lot of parents not okay with, and that's being on social networking. Because I know a lot of parents who are like, "Oh, my kid doesn't need a Facebook. My kid doesn't." I almost feel like it'd be unfair because it's like now they feel like they're left out. And
I think technology and social networking is reality. It's like,
it's trying to stop something that eventually is going to be the norm.
Kids have been abducted from parks, but in my time, that's happened. Kids get hit by cars riding bikes, but you can't stop kids from riding bikes because of the fear of all of that stuff. You just got to be careful. You know what I mean? You gotta treat the internet and social networking like you would people face to face. You don't share certain information with people online. You don't talk about certain things with people online, and you don't do meet physically with people unless you know who it is. And I think my daughter's pretty bright, and I trust that she's not doing anything that she shouldn't be. And I feel that
But you're always one Google search away from
right.
like probably something that.
You're right, but you know what? She can also walk to the store to get a donut, and you're an inch away from a creep. You know what I mean? There's inherent danger in life.
Well, not even the creep part. I'm not so much talking about like somebody taking her or tricking her into meeting her. I think it's the fact that like when we were 12 or 13 or 14 or 15, whatever, how old you were when first time you saw like a porno mag, and it's today. It's probably happening a lot younger. You have people who talk about there. There's probably kids who watch Two Girls, One Cup because they hear adults talk about it. And they're like, I can
which
just
I've
Google.
still never seen.
Yeah, which believe me, you're not missing out on anything that won't traumatize you for life. But the thing is that somebody can just Google that, and it doesn't matter what age you are. And I wonder if it's gonna get to a point where we're just gonna be like, okay, this is porn, this is violence, and we all have to come to the conclusion that we just, instead of hiding or secluding, isolating kids from this information, is understanding it. It's the fact that, okay, you can look up porn, but it's dirty, it's disgusting. Well, I don't agree that it's dirty or disgusting. I think it's kind of weird how it seems more taboo than violence. You watch TV, you can show bloodshed, shooting, stabbing, it's whatever, but and then it's like, no, but you got to blur out the nipples. Like, it's like, wait, what do you think is more traumatizing to the kid? But I think that maybe eventually, I mean, I think at a young age, like when that transition of like realizing what a girl looks like naked, like it's just happening younger. And I don't necessarily think it's, there's always been violence on TV. Now you have more access to it. But I think you're going to hope that you can raise a kid who probably isn't. I mean, we're curious. When you're young, you're curious. You're going to Google certain things, seeing what comes up. I remember when I was in, like, I don't know if it was middle school or high school, when it was like rotten.com or some type of, it showed all these, who knows how many of them were real, but like all these pictures from crime scenes of suicides and stuff like that. And I remember going on there once, and I had a buddy that was like so intrigued with it. And I'm just like, he was always going on. He's like, oh my God, this is crazy. And he was infatuated with it. I mean, he turned out to be a okay kid,
So as far as you know.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. And like, who knows what he's, but
I mean,
but my point is that it doesn't necessarily, like, is it one of those things that as long as is it the information that is going to be the issue, or is the fact that, okay, we get exposed to it and we can just kind of say, hey.
It's all how you process it, I think.
Yeah.
It's how you process anything. I mean, we can be traumatized. Based on our personal life experiences, there's different things that traumatize different people at different capacities. You know what I mean? If you witness something, just death in general. I remember, I lost, my first significant loss was my grandfather when I was 13 years old. That was my first brush with mortality. And that had a big impact on me. I remember crying, and that's the first real death of somebody close to me that I remember. And then losing my brother was a huge deal. Now, I remember people around me not having what I felt was appropriate levels of sympathy and understanding for that loss. And when you think about that, that's kind of a weird thing. But then you look at their lives, and there are people that the loss they experience is very limited. You know what I mean? Somebody that goes through trauma and tragedy has more empathy and sympathy for somebody because they understand that feeling. But if you've never lost somebody significant in your life, you don't really know. You can't project what that feels like. When you're young and your friend's grandparents die, you're like, yeah, I feel bad. But unless you felt that feeling, in my opinion, unless you felt that feeling, you really can't empathize with it to the full.
Not to the fullest, yeah.
Right.
I think some people are very good at feeling somebody's pain through them.
Right. Oh, that. Yeah. I remember when I lost my grandfather. That was very hard for me.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, like, if you hear somebody, like, I've been in situations where I've heard people talk about, like, pain that they felt or things that they've been through, tragic things that happened in their lives, and like just listening to it and almost seeing the feelings come back as they tell the story.
Yeah.
Or it puts me there, and it's almost like, it's almost like one of those things where what's reality? Like, even if you don't experience it, if you think about it and you put yourself there, you almost feel like you're experiencing it yourself. Like, I've always had this thing where, like, when somebody tells me a story, I try to be them in that story. Yeah. Like, I try to put myself, and sometimes I do it. It's subconsciously doing it because I don't try to do it. But like, and sometimes I'll feel myself like somebody's telling me a story and I'm getting sadder than them, and I'm like, wait, they're telling me the story. It happened a long time ago. They obviously, have coped with it enough where they can tell the story. And why am I like all?
But if you've had a similar experience.
Oh, you have a way better idea.
You're better able to understand what that's like.
And growing,
like if somebody loses their job, if you've never lost a job, You don't know what that's. Well, just get another job. That would be the reaction of somebody that never lost a job. Well, there's plenty of jobs. You can just get another job.
You know what you just remind me of when the conservatives say just get a job. You don't need minimum wage. Just work more hours. It's like.
But then, and that's a. You know what? I've never been unemployed. I don't know what that's like. I've never since I was a paper boy. As a 11-year-old, I've always had an income. I've been at the job that I'm at now for 20 years. But so I don't know what that's like. And then I'll see something on TV about somebody on welfare or food stamps, and they're talking about the struggle to find a job, to find work, and I'm like, wow, that seems really difficult.
Well, that's the thing that kind of makes me a little angry, is the fact that a lot of the people who are anti raising minimum wage or anti-welfare or all these things, most of them have never been there to understand it. And to there's something about, it's proven, it's statistics that very few people go from rags to riches. They go up a significant amount in the next social class. That doesn't happen often. And so this idea that if you just work hard and it's not true. Like, the rich have progressively made or consistently made more money throughout the years, and the the middle class have made the same, and with the, if not less, and with the value of money going down and the prices of things going up, we're technically making less money. And so it's one of those things where when a lot of the people who are complaining are trying to say that minimum wage raising it's going to do this and it's going to do that, or just go get a job. There's always going to be more people who want a job than there are jobs, and that's not going to change. Yeah. There's never not been unemployment. There's never not been, and that's not because of the fact that there's always been lazy people. It's the point is there's always going to be more people looking for work than there is work. So, no. But yeah. So I just I'm not sure I agree with the fact that a lot of the people who complain about it. I
think the rich have done a good job of getting the middle class and the lower middle class to look down upon people that are on food stamps or collected unemployment. I mean,
I heard this
average people get on people's cases about that, and it blows my mind. Like, I know a lot of people, myself included. I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination. Like, we're not very far. I'm like a shoulder injury away from
being poor.
Yeah. Like, seriously, that could happen to any one of us.
Absolutely.
But these same people that I know that are a shoulder injury away from being poor look down upon the poor. And I remember seeing a statistic, and I won't get it accurate, but in the ballpark, it was something about per $1,000 of tax dollars, like $23 goes to assistance in terms of food stamps and welfare. That same $1,000, over $800 of that $1,000 goes towards subsidies to corporations.
I was just going to bring that up, which is corporate welfare.
Yeah, it's corporate welfare. It's ridiculous.
And that's the thing. So just like, so they can get help, but other people can't.
Right.
And there's something, I don't know there's something about when you're in a higher class or social class, like if you're rich or whatever, they feel like there's something about, like, you feel like I must have made it because I worked harder. Yeah. And that's not always the case. It's proven that most people who are rich and financially, are in the rich class, they were born into wealthy families, or they were born with some wealth,
or had more opportunity, usually, based on on a lot of things. There's so many factors that go into that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. That's why I always say, I'm like, when you see somebody who you say, oh, that person's he's a loser, he didn't do anything with his life. This, you have to look at it as, if I was him, raised by his family, or or lack of being raised by his family.
Point?
Yeah, so it's like I'm starting at I'm starting already ahead, and it's I have a couple black friends. They say the same thing. We talk about racism. It's just how much of it's still a factor, and all this stuff and their opinions on it and whatnot. And I have a buddy who hopefully could be on the podcast soon, and who's going to talk about this stuff, because he's really opinionated and really awesome to talk to, because he's passionate about what, and I love hearing passionate people, regardless what the issue is. And but he's like, even today, white people have started at they get to start halfway through the race, and we still have to start at the starting point, or whatever type of metaphor you want to use. But the point is that we've gotten a head start, and there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to
the best analogy I heard about that would be like a football game. And people say, well, everybody's equal now. Slavery's been gone for so long and blah, blah, blah. Everybody's an opportunity now. But it's like I saw the analogy where they compared, they talked about affirmative action, and they said it'd be like playing a football game with a completely different set of rules for 3 quarters and playing the 4th quarter with the same rules for both teams. Like one
that's actually a
one
good way of
team
putting it.
has privilege for 3 quarters, and then come the 4th quarter, the rules apply to both teams. Like it's insurmountable in some ways, just because some people have risen above where their start. The term we used earlier was starting point. Doesn't mean it's all equal. You know what I mean? You cannot deny that there have been separate rules for different people throughout the years.
And there's a great documentary called Bloods and Crips. What the hell is the full title? But I remember when I first watched the documentary, I'm like, somebody recommended it, or I read a review on it or something like that, and I'm just like, I hope it's not just a movie about gangs. And I'm like, that's intriguing, but I'm like, it's not, whatever. It's not, that interesting to me. But really what you learned was what made it really interesting, and what made it a really good documentary, and why it got really good reviews, was the fact that it actually showed you how racism created these gangs. Because what you would do, you'd put everybody in the same group. You wouldn't let people who made more money in the black community move. Like real estaters wouldn't let them move into white areas. They'd put them all in the same group, and so kids were being raised by other shitheads, instead of having a opportunity of being having friends that maybe weren't into crime or whatnot, this and that. So you're constantly prolonging their progression, by putting them instead of, because obviously environment's a big influence on who we become and what we are, and actually this guy who wrote the book, I forget, Hunter something, he wrote the book called The Straight A Conspiracy. He's actually a co-host on the Brian Callen podcast, and he wrote the book, and the book's about the fact that the conspiracy about straight A's is that you say, oh, I'm just not good at math, or oh, I'm just not a smart kid. That's bullshit. We all have the opportunity of being smart. We can either choose to in other words, genetics have a small portion, a small part of it, but a bigger part of it is our willingness to want to learn, and the whole idea of it's just not me. I guess I just wasn't born to be good at math is bullshit, and so the point is that, so if you put these people in these communities with crime and whatnot, this and that, and these kids are raised in these communities, even though their parents have good jobs and they have a good parent, obviously they have environments that aren't good, which they're going to be more likely to be influenced by, and in other words, they are less likely to succeed in life. Where you compare it to if a black family moved to a nice, they can afford a nice house in a nice area, and their friends are going to be probably not coming from bad, whatever, bad families or whatnot, so they'll be more likely to succeed. So it's just, in other words, it's the fact that actually our racism caused a lot of these gangs and these angry communities and and crime, and it was just basically a downward spiral, and it was just like bad kids were influencing kids that could have potentially been good kids, and then created more bad kids, and those kids, and it's all because, and so it's amazing how much we do have to blame Caucasians for this, and
I see. I'd have to see.
It's very interesting. I'll tell you, it blew me away, because I didn't realize it was going to get to the history, and I didn't realize how much white people had a hand in it, and how they really did potentially create, the Crips and the Bloods in some way, the gangs. But I know we've been going for a while, but just want to let everybody know, thanks for checking out the shows. I think it's awesome that people are checking them out. Please retweet, share, do whatever you can. We really appreciate it. Rate our stuff on iTunes. Go there, give us 5 stars or 1 star, whatever you think we deserve. But if just rate it to kind of help us out. It doesn't take much to help us out, and we really appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who's been listening. I think I speak for both of us when I say that, and I just think it's awesome. I think that the fact that we're getting any views and plays or whatnot, it just kind of makes me feel like this wasn't such a crazy idea after all,
and it's a lot of fun too.
And even if we had 0 views, I think we would still do it just for the sake of I really enjoy this, and we got an opportunity to meet a lot of cool people and stuff that like that. So we got a bunch of interesting guests coming up. Not exactly sure on the dates yet or times or anything like that. So follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, and all that stuff. And that way, once I get the dates, I'll tweet those and let everybody know. And give us opinions. Give us opinions on guests. Throw us opinions on things you want us to talk about or don't want to talk about. We probably won't listen to you, but it's always good to get feedback. Subconsciously, we'll probably take your advice. So definitely give us some feedback. I love hearing from people and just knowing that people are listening and stuff. And hopefully, we're giving people something to listen to on their way to work or while they're at work or whatever to make the time go by. And hopefully giving you something informative or you can take something from this. The same way other podcasts and other people that we've had on the show, has done for my life. So thanks again. Keep checking out. Hopefully another week or 2 or whatever, we'll have another show for you. So just keep listening and thanks again.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
See ya. Bye.